This week we have again the pleasure of reading two parashot. So like last week, usually the class that we do is only one time a week on a Sunday. Last week we did the same thing since we have two parashot and I don't want to miss one parasha, a class of one parasha. And today we're doing another class. On Sunday we did the parasha of what's called Achrei Mot. And today we're going to learn about the parasha that's called Kedoshim. Now Kedoshim is one of the most powerful parashot in the Torah that Rashi says that the foundation for the entire Torah is in this parasha. And in this parasha we learn about a certain mitzvah that it's very, very famous mitzvah. We mention it all the time, but we don't know how to do it. And in this parasha we read a very special verse that it says, "Ve'ahavta lereacha kamocha." You should love your fellow person like yourself. Very famous pasuk in the Torah that Rabi Akiva explains it. There is a klal gadol b'Torah. This is a big foundation of the Torah. And constantly we're talking about loving another person. But really, how do you expect me to do it? To love another person. How can the Torah expect me to control my love? And since this is the topic we want to talk about, so the appropriate way to start with is with a funny joke that I heard not too long ago, that there was a young girl, she was going on a date with a man before getting ready to get married, and she went out with the person a few weeks, and a month, and 2 months. After 2 months, her mother tells her, "No, why, what's going on? Why aren't you, he wants to marry you. Why don't you want to get married with him?" She tells him, "Listen, you know what, I don't love him. It's very hard for me to love him. He's nice, he's polite, he has money, he looks good, but I just can't love him." And the mother says, "Why don't you love him?" So she tells her, "Because he doesn't believe in Gehenom. He doesn't believe in the world to come. And I can't love a person that doesn't believe in the world to come, and especially in Gehenom." So the mother tells her, "Don't worry, get married with him. After 2 months that he's married with you, not only that he will believe there's a Gehenom, he's going to know there's a Gehenom." So the mother is maybe somebody can open the door because Amy is stuck. Somebody close the door. Unfortunately, it's not a joke. Unfortunately, it's not a joke. The point of the joke is to make is how can I really build my love? Can I love somebody? How is the Torah commanding me to love something? The Torah tells me, "Ve'ahavta lereacha kamocha." You should love your fellow person like yourself. So the Torah is telling me I should invent love now. I should come up somehow and create love. And how is that possible? How can I develop love for somebody, and especially when that somebody hurts me or does something bad to me? That's even harder. To develop the love to somebody that I want to love, that's one thing. But to develop a love or to practice or to love somebody that actually hurts me or did something wrong to me, how do I do that? And why the Torah is actually expecting me to do such a thing? How you can command somebody to love? I mean, I can't control my heart. If I love, I love. If I don't have, I don't. So, first of all, our sages teach us that you can control love. Love can be controlled. Why? Because it comes from the heart. And we know that our mind can control our heart. So in essence, we can control it. But we want to know how, and mainly, how does the Torah expect me to do it? Must be, if the Torah tells me to do something, must be a way how I can do that. Because the Torah is not going to come and ask me to do something without the possibility of be able to do it and without giving me a tool. So the Torah basically says, if you want to love something, you will love it. It's all about what you have in your mind. If you do a certain block, then you're not going to love that thing or the person. But really, how is the Torah expecting us to do such a thing? We're very simple people. I mean, some people are great people, like we know Levi Yitzchak from Bardichov. There was a great, great tzaddik a few hundred years ago. And he was known to be such a person that you could spit in his face and he would still love you. There's a famous story that at the time when he was alive, there was a lot of problems between two groups of people, between the Hasidim and the ones who were against the Hasidut. And there was a lot of problems. There was violence, there was all sorts of issues going on, to a point that every place that he went, he was physically attacked, he was thrown out of the shul where he was. There was all sorts of problems going on that literally at some point it became very dangerous. And at some point he was literally threatened that if he comes back to this place, they're going to beat him to death. So of course he left. And then came a few of his students, and they did not like that. They were like, we don't like that these individuals are threatening our rabbi. And they were like, okay, we want to hurt the people that threaten our rabbi. And then they went to get a blessing from him. The Hasidim of Rabbi Yitzchak from Barditcher went to him to tell him, we want a blessing, that you will give us a blessing that we can hurt the people who hurt you. So before they were even able to do such a thing, he was already praying to Hashem, please, I don't want anybody that is going to get hurt because of me. So we also say that in the Nosach of the Ari, before we say Kriyat Shema Lamita, that we're asking to Hashem, please, I don't want anybody to Chas v'Shalom get hurt because of me. So very few people are in the level of Rabbi Yitzchak from Barditcher that somebody can do something bad to him and he prays to Hashem, please make sure that the person doesn't get harmed. Somebody will do something bad to me, I will all my intentions are going to pray that the ceiling is going to collapse on his head. That's usually the nature of somebody. Something will do something bad to me. Every time that I'm going to be next to a grave of a tzaddik, I'm going to be mentioning his name. Maybe some disease should hit him. That's the reality, the sad reality. Somebody does something bad to me, then it's very hard for me not to get upset. And the Torah comes and tells me, listen, I know who you are. I know who you are. Therefore, the verse in our parasha, it says, Lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha. This is what the Torah comes and says, don't have hate towards your brother in your heart. What does it mean in your heart? That they don't know about it. Now, it doesn't mean that you can hate somebody out loud. But usually you can hate somebody and you're not going to say anything about it. You'll still put a smile on your face. You'll still pretend everything is okay. But regardless, the Torah says, Lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha. Don't hate another person. Now what is it referring to? It's referring to that you now come to a certain individual and you tell that individual, listen, I need your help for something. And he tells you, I don't want to. Just tells you straight out. Or gives you some excuse. Now you have a reason to hate that person. Well, I'm asking for your help. You can't help me? So what will be developed right after that? That you hate that person. Why couldn't he help me? So when the Torah says don't hate your brother, is first of all, don't hate for any reason. You should not have hate to another person. But it's giving a few scenarios. And what happens if now you come and you have a lot of guests in your house, and you notice that you ran out of desserts. You run to your neighbor, you tell your neighbor, listen, I have a whole house full of guests. Do you have maybe some dessert that I can offer to the guests? And he tells you, no, I don't have anything. Happens to be that you peek a little bit in the house, you see a beautiful watermelon on the table. And you're like, I have a lot of, you're helping me out. No, I don't have anything. So right away, you will develop anger against that person. And this is one example. I'm just throwing one example. You can use your imagination. So first of all, the Torah tells me, don't hate your brother. First of all, don't hate him. He has a reason. Now what does the Torah tell me after that? Now you have to prove him. You have to tell him that. You have to tell him, listen, it wasn't nice, it wasn't okay, whatever it is. But later on, the Torah says, Lo tikom velo titor. Don't have revenge. And revenge, there's two ways of revenging. Linkom velintor. Linkom is to revenge. That next time he comes to me, now I'm going to show you. Last time you didn't help me, wait till the time that you're going to need my help. I'm going to throw it straight to the face. I'm going to tell you, remember when you didn't help me then? Now I'm not going to help you. This is called to have revenge. So the Torah says, Al tikom, don't have revenge. Then there's another thing that the Torah tells me not to do, is lo lintor. Lintor means that, I'm assuming with the example that I gave you, a month later, that person comes and tells you, I'm stuck, I need something to give to my guest. To revenge is to say, I don't have anything. You didn't give me, I'm not giving you. This is to revenge. Lintor means that you give him and you're saying, see, I'm not like you. When I asked you to help, you didn't help. I'm not like you, I'm helping you. This is called lintor. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to remind the person, you know, that when I asked your help, you didn't help me. I'm helping you. I'm a mensch and you're not. So, and you're not allowed to do that to prove him wrong by saying, if your nature or you really don't want to give him, but you say, I'm going to give him, just to show him how he was wrong, this is called lintor. I don't know the word in English, but we're not allowed to do that. Now, the Torah says first, Lo tisna et achicha b'levavecha, first don't develop hate, then don't revenge, and then the Torah says, V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. This is in our parasha. So the Torah is coming and telling me, somebody's going to come and annoy you, and then you are requested not to hate that person, then you're requested not to revenge, and to top all that, you have to love him. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. You should love that person. Now, how do you expect me to do such a thing? Now, if you're asking me to love my father or my mother or my best friend, okay, I'll somehow develop love to a person. But the Torah is coming and telling me, you want me to love somebody that I can't stand? That does something bad to me? How can I love that person? So, if you notice, some of you pray from the Siddur that comes from the Nosach of the Arizal. But if you notice, when we go down here to the cemetery, to the grave of the Arizal, I don't know how often you go there, if you notice next to his grave, there's a very big plaque that says all sorts of things about him, and it says in big letters, Hareni mekabel alai mitzvat aseh shel ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha. If you didn't notice that, next time you go down to the grave here of the Ari Kadosh, you'll notice that that's what it says. If you daven by the Nosach of the Ari Kadosh, the first thing you say when you open the Siddur is the same verse. Hareni mekabel alai. Here I'm accepting on myself mitzvat aseh, a positive mitzvah of ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha, that I should love another person like myself. This is a positive mitzvah from the Torah. And this is what the Arizal says. If I want to be successful in anything, I have to love another person like I love myself. But even though it's not in the same period of time, comes the Rambam, Maimonides, and he contradicts. He says, I don't agree with that. Even though Rambam is a few hundred years before him. But Rambam says, no. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha is an exaggeration. How can you really love somebody like you love yourself? Come on. Let's put the reality on the table. You cannot love somebody like you love yourself. That's the reality. This is an exaggerated way. The Torah is exaggerating here. But the Arizal says, no, it's not exaggerating. This is the foundation, the basics of everything. That you have to love another person exactly like you have to love yourself. Now we see in many different places, this is not only in our parasha that we are requested to love. There are many places in the Torah, it's spread all over the Torah, the request, the commandment from the Torah to love somebody. You know what's the famous one? This is said in Parashat Vayetchanan. We say it every day. ואהבת את השם אלוקיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך. We say Kriyat Shema twice a day. We are commanded by the Torah to love Hashem. How am I were you commanding me to love you? What kind of a commandment is that? And this is the most famous commandment, that I'm commanded to love somebody. We repeat it every day. We also find in a parasha that's called Shoftim that it says when you go out for war, velo yirach levavcha, that you have to control your heart. You can't have fear when you go out to war. Again, the commandment of controlling my heart. How can I do such a thing? And now in our parasha, that it says, "V'ahavta l'cha kamocha," basically the Torah is telling me, in other words, I have to develop love. How can I control my emotions? Everybody you will ask them, they will tell you, you can't control your emotions. If you're sad, you're sad. You're happy, you're happy. How can I control my emotions? One might argue and say, no, I'm very sorry, you can't. The Torah comes and tells you, no, you can. You can control your emotions. Your love, your hate, it's in your heart. You can control it. Now we're reading this special parasha. This special parasha is called Parashat Kedoshim. Kedoshim comes from the word holy. The Torah says that we should be holy. Ki Kadosh ani, because I'm holy. Hashem says, I want you to be holy because I'm holy. Now, this parasha is a very special parasha. First of all, it has in this parasha 50 mitzvot, which now we're in the time of counting the Omer. We spoke about it last week, that in the Torah it says that you have to count 50 days. Really, we're counting 49 days. And we talked about it last week, I don't want to repeat it. That the Torah commands me, Tisperu lachem 50 yom, you have to count 50 days. Why am I counting only 49? The short explanation is I have to count, I have to initiate the first 49, the 50th, that's already Hashem gives that to me. There is a certain power in the number 50. 50 Sharei Binah, that's Sharei Kedusha, and when they were in Mitzrayim, they went down to 49 gates of impurity. So in this parasha, we see that there's 50 mitzvot. And most of our sages, they say that this parasha is literally the foundation of the entire Torah. All the foundations of how we have to behave and conduct ourselves are in this parasha. And one of them is, of course, V'ahavta l'cha kamocha. Now, how did the system work in the time of the Mishkan? Moshe Rabbeinu would get the information from the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and then he had to give it over. If you notice, and we mentioned that a few times in couple last classes, that it always says, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe le'emor. That Hashem spoke to Moshe le'emor, to give it over. Very few times we're going to find that it doesn't say the word le'emor. It says, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe. We find that more when Hashem talks to Aaron. Vaydaber Hashem el Aaron. It doesn't have the word le'emor. Le'emor means to say, to give it over. So how did the whole system work? We know that Moshe Rabbeinu had to say everything 4 times. How did it work? Moshe Rabbeinu would go into the Ohel Moed, to the tent. Hashem would tell him the halacha, tell him the mitzvah. Moshe will go out. And the first one, he would call Aaron a Kohen. And he would tell him, listen, don't ask. Hashem just called me, and we have another mitzvah. And this is the mitzvah. And he would tell it to Aaron a Kohen. After Aaron a Kohen, he would call the 2 sons of Aaron a Kohen, and that's Elazar and Itamar. Sorry. And he would tell it to them. After that, he would call the 70 elderly people who were considered the tzaddikim, the sages of the generation. And after that, he would tell it to the entire Klal Israel. 4 times he would repeat the halacha. All this was always the same, besides one time. This parasha. This parasha was said in the concept of what's called Vayakhel. Everybody was together, and all the 50 mitzvot that Moshe Rabbeinu said, that we're reading in this parasha, were said in what's called Ma'amad Hakel, that everybody was together. It wasn't 4 times. One time for the entire nation. And why? Because Hashem wanted that everything that has to do in this parasha will signify that everybody has to hear it together. When it's talking about V'ahavta l'cha kamocha, it has to do with everybody. When other mitzvot were said, then first it was to Aaron HaKohen, then to the sons, then to the Shivim Zkenim, to the elderlies, then to the nation. Why? Because not all the mitzvahs have to do with me. If you know that in the 613 mitzvot, a huge portion of it is only for Kohanim. A very huge portion of the 613 mitzvot has nothing to do with me. I'm not a Kohen. It's only for Kohanim, only for Korbanot. So I don't need to hear it. It has nothing to do with me. And some mitzvot are for men, some mitzvot are for women, some mitzvot are for certain individuals. I don't need to hear all of them. It has nothing to do with me. But when it comes to V'ahavta l'chag kamocha, everybody is obligated in that. So all the mitzvot that we read in Parashat Kedoshim, the reason why it didn't have the 4 stages, because it has to do with everybody. The Ahavat Israel, the mitzvot V'ahavta l'chag kamocha, everybody is obligated in it. Therefore, everybody was gathered together, everybody had to hear it. So nobody will think, oh, I'm not obligated with V'ahavta l'chag kamocha. That's only for the righteous people. I'm a simple person. I don't need to like everybody. Now, this parasha starts, Kedoshim tiyu, you should be holy, ki kadosh ani, because I am holy. Basically, Hashem is telling me, you have to be holy because I'm holy. What does it mean to be kadosh, to be holy? Kadosh in Hebrew means parush, that I'm separated, I'm segregated. I'm not part of what everybody is doing. When you see a certain individual and he's saying, this is a holy man, not because he has a long beard. I know bikers in America that they have a long beard like me. They're not holy. People sometimes see me and I travel, people look at me and they're like, oh, you look like a holy man. I'm like, okay, that's what you say. I know people that look like me and they're not so holy. So the beard doesn't make a man holy. But sometimes you look at a certain individual and you say, wow, this looks like a very holy man. Why is that man or woman will be considered holy? Because they segregate themselves from things that what everybody do. And when you segregate yourself from what most people do, then you make yourself holy. Kadosh is the word holy in Hebrew. Now one might think that Kadosh is a person that all day long, does all sorts of spiritual things. And does all sorts of rituals and makes him very holy. Kadosh is a person, the Torah says, parush. Parush means that he segregates himself. People sit together and say Lashon Hara. I'm sorry, I don't want to do anything with it. I separate myself. Everybody tends to exaggerate what is called to lie. I don't want to lie. I don't want you lying. I'm sorry, it has nothing to do with me. As long as you separate yourself from what most people tend to do, then you make yourself holy. You separate yourself from things that are not desired and unwanted. This is Kadosh. Now, how is Hashem expecting us to be holy? You holy, I understand. Me? I'm not holy. Well, don't ask me to be holy. More than that, you're asking me to have love for another person. How do you expect me to have such a thing? Now, where do we see that somebody was all about V'ahavta l'chag kamocha? Who is the sage that said that? It's the famous Rabi Akiva. And Rabi Akiva says, V'ahavta l'chag kamocha ze klal gadol b'Torah. So everything happens in a very precise way, and we always read Parashat Kedoshim at the time of the Omer. Many people ask, why in the Omer we don't cut our hair? We don't listen to music. Men that trim their beards, they don't trim their beards. All sorts of rules of that we do in the Omer. So these rules that we do in the Omer are rules of what's called avlut. When somebody is mourning a death of somebody, this is called evel. So who are we mourning? Then we're mourning 24,000 students of Rabi Akiva that died in that period. There was a plague. Now some opinions say that the plague was from the second day after Pesach, and it went all the way up until Shavuot. Some opinions say, no, it stopped in Lag BaOmer. That's why Sfardis, they keep the rules of the Omer till Lag BaOmer, and after that they get married, they start listening to music, they take haircuts, because they hold by the opinion that the plague stopped in Lag BaOmer. The Ashkenazim, they go all the way to the end. They say, no, the plague went all the way till the Shavuot.
Do we know when it ended?
Excuse me?
Do we know when it ended?
There's two opinions. One opinion says that it ended on Lag BaOmer. One opinion says that it ended in Shavuot. That it went between Pesach and Shavuot.
So we don't really know.
We don't really know. but like I said, the Sfardis, they go by the opinion that the plague ended in Lag BaOmer. The Ashkenazim, they go by the opinion that it ended in Shavuot. But the reason why we follow all these rules, and we don't listen to music, we don't cut our hair, we don't do parties, we don't do engagement parties, we don't do weddings, all these rules. Why? Because we're mourning the 24,000 students. Now one might say, listen, you know how many people died in the last 3,000 years? I don't mourn them, and I don't think they're less as important. On the 7th day of Adar, that's the day Moshe Rabbeinu died. Do I do an Evel? Do I do a Yahrzeit? I don't do anything. Maybe I'll go to a lecture. And and many other sages that they die, I do a mourning when I sit Shiva for them? I don't. Why? Dafka these 24,000, I sit Shiva, so to say, for the entire time of the Omer. So first of all, Rabi Akiva, who's Rabi Akiva? Rabi Akiva was a very simple person. He was a child of converts. He was a Am Haaretz, a very simple, down-to-earth, not learned. He didn't even know how to read. And at the time, the most wealthiest person in the generation, he worked for him. His name was Kalba Savoa. And Rabbi Akiva was one of the workers. He used to clean the stables, clean the dirt. And this wealthy person had a daughter. Her name was Rachel. And she couldn't find a good shidduch. And one time she looked at Rabbi Akiva and she was like, that's the one I want to marry. She, of course, had a very good eye, and she was able to see the potential in such a great man. She didn't see the dirt or the fact that he didn't know how to read. And she comes to her father and she says, I found a husband. He tells her, you did? Who? She tells him Akiva. He tells her, the guy who cleans the dirt of the horses and the donkeys in the stables. You're not marrying him. She says, yeah, that's the one I want to marry. So he says, okay, you can marry him, but you're out of the loop. I'm kicking you out. And that's what happened. She married him, and the father threw her out. And they were so poor, they would live in a tent in the street. But she really saw the potential in the great man, that when he was 40, he started learning to read, not learning Torah. He started learning to read. He used to go to the yeshiva with little kids, and they would make fun of him. But later on, he became one of the most biggest pillars in Jewish history, Rabbi Akiva, to a point that he became, up until today, he's known to be literally one of the pillars in the oral Torah. Now, he had many students, and at some point they all died from a plague. And the story says that they died because they didn't treat each other with respect. And you would think that such great sages would have the minimum of knowledge to treat each other with respect. V'ahavta l'cha kamocha. That's what the Rebbe, the rabbi, taught. The klal gadol b'Torah. The whole Torah is depending on this part. So, since they were not able to treat each other with respect, now of course there's a big question. How did they not do v'ahavta l'cha kamocha? There are many different opinions. How they failed, why they failed. And the point to take from that is that even such great individuals, that they say that even the biggest Talmid Chacham in our generation is nothing compared to the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. You have to understand that the ones who stayed and didn't die are Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yossi. These are like giants. These are the students that stayed, that were not killed by the plague. But we know that the students of Rabbi Akiva were giants. How can they fail in such a thing? This comes to teach us that even giants in the Torah can fail in V'ahavta l'cha kamocha. And the reason why they didn't practice, not because they didn't accept each other, because they didn't know how to tell to each other how great they are. Now, I didn't really find a good word in English. In Hebrew it's called lefargen. Lefargen is that I come and I tell you, you know, you're very good at something. I mean, in English you might say encourage, compliment. Compliment is another word. Another word is to embolden. Is when I come to say to somebody, I mention how good they are. And this is called in Hebrew lefargen. And one thing that the students of Rabbi Akiva did not do is that. is to come to say to another person, you're very good at what you do. You're very successful here. Is to see good in somebody else. And this is something that we lack. And this is something that the students of Rabbi Akiva didn't have. They were not able to come to lefargen to each other. And a compliment is one word, but it's not really lefargen. I really didn't find the right word in English, but compliment is a good way. But lefargen, it means that somebody does something good, they succeeded, and you come and acknowledge it, and you tell them, and you're really happy for that person, for succeeding in what they did. To validate. But it's even more than that, because most people don't do that. If you're successful in something, very few people are going to actually come and say, wow, beautiful, you did something great. And forget about coming and saying that. Most people will not even feel that. And that's why the students of Rabbi Akiva, they died, because they were not able, each one of them was a giant. It was hard for them to come and say to the other person, wow, you're unbelievable. How were you able to figure the halacha out? And because they were so great in a very refined way, that's what caused them to die. And this is really the problem that we have. That we find it very hard to compliment another person, to see the good in another person and to value it and to validate it. And this is called lefargen. And there's a story, one of the rabbis in the dynasty of Chabad is known as the Rebbe Maharash. And he had 2 kids. Now, the older kid was shorter in height from the younger kid. So he had a problem with that he's older, but the younger one is taller than him. And one time, what did he do? He dug a hole in the ground, and he told his brother, can you stand in the hole? And the brother went into the hole, and he says, okay, now I'm taller than you. So came their mother, a very righteous woman, Rebbe and Rivka, and she told him, instead of digging a hole, why don't you put a stone and stand on the stone? That way you're still going to be higher. Why do you have to dig a hole for him to go lower? And when I read that story, it's such a wise teaching. Why do I need to put somebody down to make me look higher? Just put myself higher. And this is the problem that we all have, is that I feel that I need to be better than everybody. And when somebody's better than me, I don't like that. So I need to put him down in order to make me feel higher. That's a very bad thing. And that's where the Torah comes and tells me, "V'ahavta l'recha kamocha." Love another person like you love yourself. When you do something good, you go and advertise it everywhere. You know what I just did? I was able to do this and that. But it's very hard for you to see the success of another person and to validate it and to compliment and to say, wow, kol hakavod. This is v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. Because when I was successful in doing something, I will go and advertise it all over the world. I will call my friend, do you know what I just did? You can't believe it. I cracked the atom today. And I was successful in doing this. You go and advertise it. You post on your Facebook. Today I was able to achieve this and that. Very few people are humble and they keep quiet. But when you're able to achieve something, you run out and you advertise it. When somebody else is successful, that's when you have a sour face. Oh, how was he able to do that? I'm trying to do this already for 10 years. This guy did it like that. And right away it creates this hate and resentment towards that person. I'm trying to get married already for 10 years. That person just went into the shidduch world, got married right away. I'm trying to develop this business for years. This guy just came and the exact same trade, same business. He made money like that. And I'm just giving examples that we see somebody else's success, and instead of putting myself in a higher place, I don't like seeing that somebody else is more successful, that I dig a hole to put him lower. And that's the human nature, is to make somebody be, so to say, lower. It's hard for me to see somebody higher than me. It's very hard for me to when I see somebody have more than me, I want him to have less. That's like in a very refined way. It's not necessarily that you walk in the street and be like, oh, look at this guy has a beautiful house. I wish the house will explode. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that in a very refined way, it's hard for me to see somebody else that they have success, that they're better, that they're achieving. That's when the Torah comes and tells me, "V'ahavta l'cha kamocha," that you have to love another person like you love yourself. You have to develop this love. And when the Torah comes and tells me something like this, commanding me to love, and I might ask, how do you want me to love somebody? You develop it in your mind, because the mind is much more powerful than the heart. The whole teachings of Hasidut is talking about moach shalit al halev, to bring to the fact that my mind controls my heart. That all my emotion, love or hate or jealousy, can be controlled by my mind. Why? Because I can do in my mind 1 + 1. Why should I be angry at that person? Why should I be jealous at that person? That can be controlled in my mind. If I know how to control it in my mind, it will manifest into the heart, and my heart will be controlled not to hate that person, not to be jealous at that person. That's why the Torah comes and tells me, yes, I am commanding you to love another person like you love yourself. The same way that I'm commanding you to love Hashem, v'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. Every day when we say Kriyat Shema, the Torah tells me, you should love your God with all your heart and with all your soul. B'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha. So the Torah knows what it's talking about. Now the Torah comes and tells me, you should love another person, v'ahavta l'cha kamocha, but love him like you love yourself. The same way that you would throw a party because you were successful in doing something, do the exact same thing to another person. And be happy for the other person for their success and their achievement. And how do you do that? You control it in your mind. You're able to put it in your mind to say, that person is successful not because he's necessarily better than me or smarter than me, because that's the will of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And even if he's better than me, okay, so what? It doesn't mean that I have to be best in everything. It doesn't mean that I have to be number one. If I think that I need to be number one all the time, that's a very bad character trait. I need to be able to make space for everybody. And when somebody is taller than me, not to dig a hole and tell him, go in the hole so I can be taller than you. Lehefech, come and do something that will raise you to a higher level, that now you're going to be taller than him. And the way to raise yourself to a higher level is to be able to accept another person and to see and to value their success and to still love them. That's the stone that I will stand over to make me higher. And if I don't do that, I will be lower. And that's why the students of the Rabi Akiva died, because they were not able to do that. The ones that were able to do that, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yossi, all the students, they were able to elevate themselves and say, okay, I'm good at this, you're good at that. And even if you are 100% better than me in everything, I'm a complete loser next to you, so what? That's how Hashem created me. So what if you're better than me? Big deal. The reality is that I told you before that every one of us possesses at least one character trait, one quality that nobody has. So maybe somebody else is much better than me in everything, but I at least have something that I'm better than everybody else. That's how Hashem created me. Hold on 1 second, we're almost done, then we'll go for the questions. The point I want to take from that, because the Torah wants to teach me something practical. And v'ahavta l'cha kamocha is practical. It's not something that I can do. It's something that everybody can do. And the Torah comes and tells me, you have to do that. That's why the Arizal says every day, I start my day, I accept on myself. I'm accepting the fact to do the mitzvah of v'ahavta l'cha kamocha. Because I am able to do that. It means that today, I'm going to accept everybody. I'm going to see everybody eye to eye. Not better than me, not less than me. That's why Rabi Akiva was able to say Zeklal Gadol b'Torah. This is a huge foundation in the Torah, is to be able to make space for everybody. Let everybody shine in their own way. This is such an important lesson, not only for myself to be able to hold me in the right place, that I will chas v'shalom not go down, rather to be able to make space for everybody to shine in their own colors. And when you do that, you are fulfilling a positive mitzvah from the Torah. V'ahavta l'cha kamocha is a positive mitzvah. It's one of the mitzvot aseh. And what I want to take from that is that when I don't find it so easy to do it, When I can't develop the love to another person because they hurt me, then the development has to be in my mind, not in my heart. Because my heart wants to hate that person, I want to be angry at that person. But the mind can come and say, no, there's nothing to be angry. That person did that for whatever reason. And just accept that. And I can control my heart through my mind. And when the Torah comes and tells me that I can do something, not only that I can do it, it also gives me the koach, the power to do such a thing. I just have to believe that it could be done. And now in such a auspicious time that I see that great sages like the students of Rabi Akiva died because of that, that's so much more so gives me the ability to understand that, wait a minute, if they died means how important it is that I should work on that and bring it to my existence, that yes, I have to work constantly on the fact that I have to accept and love another person like I love myself, even though it seems exaggerating and hard, but it can be done. It can be done by me controlling my thoughts and my mind. Bezrat Hashem, if we will get to a point that we start practicing V'ahavta l'cha kamocha, needless to say, we're going to get the biggest present ever, and that's going to be the coming of Mashiach, because that's all we need. We have enough mitzvot, Baruch Hashem, we have enough of everything. I mean, it's never enough, it's always good to add, but we're only missing one thing, as this is called Ahavat Israel. That's what we're missing. If we want to blame the redemption for not coming, I can blame it on Ahavat Israel, even though it looks like there's a lot of Ahavat Israel, a lot of love and help. We're still lacking it because it's coming from a very deep place in us. And if we're able in our own place to work on my love for another person, doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter what he did to me, at least in my place, I'm purifying my spot in the universe, I'm making the redemption come faster and closer. That's what we want to concentrate on, is to really practice the fact that to accept everybody. When we're able to do that, I can guarantee to you we're going to be definitely celebrating the coming of Mashiach much, much faster than we think. Should have a beautiful, restful Shabbat and a beautiful rest of the next week.